Dzień dobry Państwu. Witam serdecznie w imieniu Stowarzyszenia Polaris OPP w Sopotni Wielkiej.
It is my great pleasure to invite you to our second expert meeting. We would like to welcome you as part of our program Rational Lighting Policy in Practice. It is a program which is financed by the EEA funds as part of regional funds. It is a second meeting of this type. The first one took place recently in December. And right now I am really happy to be able to meet you in the new year. And at the same time, I would like to welcome our guests, most of all our lecturer. Today with us we have Przemysław Tabaka, who comes from the Łódź Technical University. And he also participates in the Committee of Light Pollution. And I would also like to welcome the people present at the multifunctional room, because this meeting is special, as in it is a combination of a combined meeting of two different entities, because we are also joined by the Council of the Local Dialogue Council. I imagine we are hearing each other quite well. Can you hear us? Yes, apparently they can. We are still coping with some technical issues that came up at the very last minute, but I hope we will manage them really soon. It is our great pleasure to also be able to welcome guests from abroad. Especially for you, we also have interpretation into English, which you can hear on the Discord version of this meeting. In the chat you can find a link which will lead you to the English version of the meeting. Today's meeting is now an open meeting, and that is why you cannot enable your video or your microphone, but you are free to use the chat room, and we will be happy to see on the chat where you are. Where are you staying right now? Which towns or cities you are connecting from? It would be great to see where our listeners are connecting. Let's not lose too much time. Just at the end of the logistical information, I would like to welcome our technical team. We have Anna, who is the interpreter, myself, and also interpretation into Polish Sign Language provided by Ela Żurawska. Of course, the discussion part will be left for the end of the meeting. We will want to invite you to participate in the conversation after the lecture, but now I am giving the floor to our main guest, Przemysław Tabaka, and he will be talking about the technical requirements that need to be met by lighting solutions in the dark sky community meetings on the example of Sopotnia Wielka, which is exactly where we are connecting from with you. So I'm giving the floor to Przemek. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a huge pleasure to present to you a lecture which will be a type of a general notice about lighting and about the requirements, because it needs to be clearly said that the factor which causes this phenomenon, the undesired phenomenon of light pollution, is lighting equipment. And the parameters of that lighting equipment is something that can actually affect how we can limit this phenomenon. I will present some solutions which have been implemented in Sopotnia Wielka. People who maybe don't know the topic, because we do have we have guests from abroad. Sopotnia is located in the south of Poland, in Śląskie Voivodeship, and that is where the program Protecting the Dark Sky is being implemented. When it comes to the systematics of the public lighting, which is in place in Sopotnia Wielka, we can single out three main categories. The first category regards street lighting, which, by the way, was modernized, upgraded in 2011, and I will talk about it later on in more detail. The second category, which also is in place in Sopotnia Wielka, is the lighting of parking lots, and the third category is lighting of buildings. When it comes to public buildings, it's mainly the lighting of the church and also lighting of the school complex in Sopotnia Wielka. The main question that comes to mind is what possibilities we have to reduce the undesired light pollution. There are actually several possibilities like that. Firstly, I will tell you about the lighting equipment, in particular the lighting fixtures, because it is the source of light and it can potentially generate unnecessary glows in the sky. Firstly, I will present two extreme examples. First one, which is shown as we can see your slides. It seems that you haven't shared your screen. It's something we'll be addressing. Now we have that.
Tak, teraz mamy, jak najbardziej.
I will just return to the second slide, which indicates the types of lighting in Sopotnia Wielka. Street lighting, parking lot lighting, and lighting of public buildings, of the church and of the school complex. So when it comes to the means of reducing lighting, indeed the pictures on the slides will be very helpful. The variant A is very undesirable solutions that you can see here. So lighting fixture in the form of a milk light bulb was used. This type of solution is not used in Sopotnia Wielka. This is just a picture which illustrates the unfavorable solution. And the second extreme example is variant B. Here we have the right lighting fixtures which direct the light towards the ground, so the light is directed where it is actually needed. So in case one, light is being directed both upwards and downwards. So this is a solution which should be avoided. And the particularly desirable solution is version B, where the light fixtures help us direct the light where it is needed, and it helps limit undesired light pollution. Moving on with regard to using the right fixtures, we could say that light created by way of light fixtures can be divided into two elements. One is the unnecessary upward light ratio, and the second, which is desirable, is the downward flux fraction. If we were to take the least desirable variant as an example, the manner of light distribution can be seen on this in this figure. If this curve was to presented on such a graph, you can see how light emission, upward and downward emission looks like. If we were to introduce this red line, which is the border where we can talk about upward or downward light emission, in the case of this sphere, that is the example, you can see that almost 60% of emitted light, of the generated light, is directed upwards. It is directed towards the sky and lost irreversibly. And only 42% of the light is directed towards the ground. So this is definitely a waste of light energy, because the light is used where it is not necessary and where it is actually harmful. Of course, we know that this light doesn't just disappear. If we were to add both upward and downward fluxes, we'd get the 100% of lighting generated. That was the undesirable example, and now I will analyze the correct example, a desired example. This is a depiction of how light is emitted by the right type of street lighting fixture. You can see that the entire flux is directed downward. So if we were to use a two-dimensional figure, you can see that here absolutely 0% of light is directed upwards, which is definitely beneficial, and the entire light generated by this light fixture is directed downwards. So the entire light flux is directed where it should be directed and where it is needed. Now I will show you a few solutions which can illustrate various types of fixtures so that you can imagine which constructions, which structures will generate upward fluxes. First, I will show you the conventional solutions, those which have been used for many years in Poland and which still you can come across. The type that you can see in this picture, however, they are currently being decommissioned and now they are being replaced by LED solutions. You can see that this convex part will result in some of the light being directed upward. Some could say that LED fixtures are a solution to this problem. Well, there are examples of LED fixtures where, because of what components were used, optical components, so those characteristical convex fixtures, they will result in some of the light fixtures, light fluxes being directed upwards. So LED technologies will not always guarantee a downward flux. And now the desirable solutions. I will show you pictures of those fixtures which generate downward light fluxes. First, the more traditional solutions. You can see that the way that the fixtures are constructed, this solution eliminates the risk of an upward light flux. And similarly, you can also see versions created in the LED technology, which are more and more frequently found in street lighting. So that was the first way of managing street lighting, using the light fixture, which guarantees that the light is directed towards the right direction. But what happens if we use the right fixture but do not install it correctly? Now moving on to the second solution, that is installation, and specifically the issue of the angle that is used. You can see that the angle which is indicated here from the point of view of the light pollution should be as small as possible. This angle should be 0 or as close to 0 as possible, but such an angle can be found quite often. These are solutions that are used in different cities. In this case, the angle in the picture is around 25%, but sometimes there are solutions where that angle is even greater, like 60% in the second picture. In relation to 60% in relation to the horizon. And sometimes fixtures are installed at an angle where there is 90%. Obviously, this is unfavorable with regard to generating light, which a significant part of is directed towards the sky. And in Sopotnia, in street lighting, the light fixtures have been installed at 0 degrees angles, which obviously is beneficial and favorable. The question of installing, assembling the fixtures is important, but very often in at private properties, those fixtures are often installed at high angles. Currently in Sopotnia Wielka, there is a project which supports the right installation of fixtures also in private households and private real estate. You can see examples of before and after the intervention. First, motion detector light was installed at a high angle, and after the intervention, the motion sensor was installed at a beneficial, favorable angle, directing the light towards the ground. And that was beneficial not only for the light generation, but also increased the effectiveness of the motion sensor itself. Now I will present some pictures that present various options of installing light fixtures. In the first picture, you can see a light fixture which was installed on the ground, and obviously some of the light fluxes shine above the building that is being illuminated. So obviously this is a solution which we should avoid. The second solution is much better because as a result of the right installation of the fixture, the light flux is directed at the building itself and it doesn't escape the building contour. However, whenever possible, the most beneficial solution is the situation presented in picture C. That is when we install a light fixture above, we install the light and shine it from upwards towards the ground. Other situations that can be used for private real estate is installing a light fixture at an angle as presented in the previous picture. Here in picture A you can see a lot of light being directed towards the sky. A better solution would be adopting a lesser angle. And again, the best solution is directing the light fixture towards the ground as much as possible. I have decided to present some results of a simulation, because one of the commonly used light fixtures in private households is a LED fixture with the light flux of 1500 lumens. The more lumens, the brighter the light, obviously. The color temperature is 3000 kelvins and the power is 20 watts. So how does this fixture shine when it comes to light distribution? You can see the results of the simulation on the graphs in 3D and 2D representations. And you can see that this light stream above the red light would be the light directed directly into the sky. With such a fixture, this light flux, the upward light flux would be zero. That obviously would be beneficial. But what if a certain angle was to be used in the installation? So this is a simulation. You can see what happens when this fixture is installed at the angle of 0 degrees, at a 10-degree angle, then a 20-degree angle. You can see that at a certain point, this curve starts to cross the red line. So everything which is above the red line is light which is directed directly towards the sky. And other examples of angles, 30, 40 and 50 degrees. I guess you've already managed to notice that the greater the angle, the larger the curve above the red line. So a greater part of the light generated by the fixture will be light pollution and will be directed towards the night. If we were to increase the angle even further to 60, 70 or 80 degrees, you can see that an even greater part of this curve is above the red line, and this means that more and more light is directed towards the sky. And if we were to adopt the solution, the variant of 90 degrees, an angle of 90 degrees, then the situation would be particularly ineffective from the point of view of lighting the area around the household and of protecting the sky.
przy poszczególnych kątach będzie emitowany bezpośrednio w niebo.
With this data from simulations, we can determine what percent of light will be generated directly towards the sky. And I will present a bar chart with results of this simulation. Please notice that the greater the angle, and you can see the angle on the horizontal axis of this graph, the greater the angle, the greater the percentage of the light flux directed directly towards the sky. So the percentage values are presented on the other axis. So the question is whether this trend presented for this specific fixture will apply to other fixtures. Well, no. In the case of different fixtures with a different shape, with a different cubicle, the percentages and the values will be different. But one thing is certain, the greater the angle, the greater the share of the light flux sent towards the sky. So this is the second possibility of limiting light pollution, that is installation, the angle. The third aspect is the color of the light and the temperature of the light. Because I'm sure you, all of us use different lighting in our houses. So we have cold or warm temperatures of the light. So the temperature of the colors is used. The greater the temperature, the colder the light. The unit used is a Kelvin. So capital K. The greater the number of kelvins, the colder the light, the cooler the light. The fewer the kelvins, the warmer the color of the light. This has also an impact on light pollution. The light temperature aspect was maybe not that important when the old type of lamps were used in street lighting, because the temperature of those lamps, that was around 2000 kelvins. However, once LED lamps started being installed, we had we suddenly had a greater range of color temperatures. By judging on the fixture alone, we cannot guess what the temperature of the color is, but the manufacturer of the fixture of the lamp is obliged to provide us with data about how many kelvins are used. And this aspect impacts the issue of light pollution. Generally, the idea of generating light consists in that a diode which is glows with blue light is covered by a luminator material, and as a result of triggering this luminophore, something which we see as white light is created. And depending on what illuminator is, what type of illuminator is used, we can talk about diodes which shine with a white warm light or a white cold light. This is important from the point of view of light pollution, because you can see this blue peak on this graph. That is the large amount of blue light which is used in cold diodes. So we have, so the colder the temperature of the light, the greater the light pollution. Why is this so important? Why is this blue light so unfavorable when it comes to light pollution? Well, the answer is quite obvious. As the wavelength changes, the intensity of the light dispersion increases. So the colorful ribbon at the top of the graph presents us how the specific wavelengths between 380 and 780 are perceived by the human eye. And in line with the Rayleigh's dispersion principle, we can see that how this relation looks like for cold and warm light. So longer wavelengths tend to be dispersed in the atmosphere more greatly. So let's take the traditional type of lamps with around 2000 kelvins. If they are still used in Sopotnia Wielka, if we were to exchange them, if we were to discuss modernization, then we would be obliged to upgrade to LED technology. The red line on this graph represents the traditional lamps, and the other colors represent LED lamps with different temperatures, with different Kelvin values. So we have 2700 kelvins, then we have 3000, 4000 kelvins, 5000 and 6000 kelvins. Please notice that in the range of the shorter wavelengths, as the coldness of the temperature rises, the value of the blue light radiation increases, and this increases light pollution. At the right side of the slide, you can see the percentage of the share of the blue light in each LED lamp. So with LEDs that have 2700 kelvins, we have around 13,000. So from the point of view of light pollution, it would be recommended to use lamps with as few Kelvin values as possible. Of course, manufacturers indicate this data. They often provide information about this data. They provide the numbers, but they also indicate that it's, let's say, a white warm light or a white cold light, and this helps us decide which to choose. And another factor, because I know that my time is slowly running out, so artificial lighting will definitely generate light pollution, and so the most easy solution that can help us that is simply deciding not to use the light if it is not necessary, to turn it off when it is not required. So at night, and specifically between midnight and 4 a.m., when there is basically no traffic, lighting should be turned off because it is unnecessary. And thanks to that, we will save money because obviously providing light consumes energy and costs money. And secondly, the light flags will not be unnecessarily generated, and thus there will be fewer light pollution. So if we were to summarize the requirements, the guidelines that were implemented in Sobotnia Wielka, first of all, using light fixtures which generate only a downward light flux. The second tip is the angle at which we install the light fixture, whenever possible at a 0 degree. Another solution, another tip is using sources of light which have a warmer temperature. So 3000 Kelvins maximum, if possible less. And the fourth aspect is turning the light off when it is not required. The time frame recommended where lights can be turned off is between midnight and 4 a.m. and that is a solution which was implemented in Sobotnia Wielka. The question of external lighting is quite broad. We cannot touch on everything, but I will just take the liberty of telling you about some recommendations which were introduced, implemented in Sobotnia Wielka when it comes to decorations. If we were to take into account Christmas decorations, which are becoming more and more popular in Poland and in other countries, it is recommended that Christmas lights are used only in the period between the 1st of December and not longer than and should be turned off and to be decommissioned on the 2nd of February, the latest. Again, it is recommended that between midnight and 4 a.m. this Christmas lighting be turned off, and there are a lot of negative consequences of using laser solutions that are unfortunately becoming more and more popular. This is a type of solution, laser lights, that should be avoided. Like I've said, this topic is a broad one. We cannot discuss everything in detail, but I hope that I managed to spark your interest and provided you with some general essential information which will help you understand what are the factors creating light pollution and how we can reduce light pollution. Thank you for your attention. And I would like to invite you to ask any questions that you might have.
To ja też się teraz włączę, tylko widzę, że mamy jeszcze problem techniczny.
We have some technical issue that we need to solve.
Okej. Dobrze, teraz chyba też już
I think everyone can see me now. Thank you for this lecture, for presenting an issue which, according to a lot of us, is quite complex and quite difficult, because the topic of reducing artificial light pollution is a very broad issue. And I also have the pleasure of summarizing what we just heard with a small quiz that will be presented to you in a moment. But in the meantime, we will move to the Q&A session. You can type your questions in the chat room, should you have any questions. You also can, we will also make it possible for you to ask questions in person via a microphone. Right now the members are muted, and now we will move on to the quiz, because an answer to our question
forma zagadki, quizu
is to be typed in the chat room.
na czacie. No, czyli tutaj niestety zebrani
So
na sali
unfortunately,
multifunkcyjnej
the people in the multifunctional room can't take part in this in this quiz, but I hope that we will be able to make up for it in different ways. It's interesting that residents of Sopotnia Wielka, as part of our project, the residents of Sopotnia Wielka have allocated 500 Polish zloty per a household, and that will cover 150 households, where with our help, residents will have the chance to modernize their external lighting. How that can be done, you've just seen those solutions. Very often, it's just a very simple solution, like I changed the degree of the installation. It is important to note that participants of our local council know that participating in the project is directed towards whoever is willing to participate. And now a surprise award, surprise prize. It will be sent via post to whoever wins our little quiz. It can be also sent abroad or to Poland. So now, please take part in our quiz. Focus. You can type your answer only in the chat box. The question will come up will appear in Polish and English. And once it appears, Przemysław Tabaka will be asked to read it out. So obviously the rule is whoever answers first gets the prize. I think we are ready now for the question. Let me paste it, and Przemek Tabaka will be reading it out. So the question is, what's the name of the perimeter, its unit is K, that describes the color of light? And I can see we have an answer, and it is a correct answer. Obviously, the answer is Kelvin, and it is correct.
Super,
congratulations.
Niezmiernie mi miło, bo z tego co widzę z panem Mateuszem chyba nie mieliśmy okazji jeszcze współpracować przy
I think Mateusz Lipek, who was the first to type in the answer, someone we still haven't had our pleasure cooperating with, so it is my pleasure to welcome you in this capacity. Please provide us with your address, and the prize is quite interesting because we actually have a light fixture with the Kelvin value of around 3000, so it is definitely brand, and also the bulletin of the Polish Electricians Association, which includes an article about the National Conference about Light Pollution, which took place, among others, thanks to Przemysław Tabaka last year, in September last year. So those two prizes will be sent to Mateusz. So find your closest parcel, a pickup point, and provide it to us. And now we also have a question.
Więc będę prosił kolegę Jakuba o przetłumaczenie dla pana Przemysława.
Tak, jest akurat pytanie bardziej do ciebie, Piotrze, ponieważ pytanie o nazwę obrazu w tle.
Well, that's actually something I didn't come up with. The picture behind me is indeed a symbolic picture. Was painted by Vincent van Gogh. Its name is The Starry Night. Let me double check the name. I always have behind me.
Symbol tej czynnej ochrony ciemnego nieba, którą
because it's symbolic for what we are doing in Sobotnia Wielka.
Bo tak naprawdę te działania prowadzimy no już teraz nawet szerzej niż tylko w naszym kraju, bo współpraca
This cooperation, our project also provides for partnership with Norway and Slovenia. So the picture is Starry Night by Van Gogh.
Ja natomiast pozwolę sobie
I will use this opportunity. I don't know if Przemysław Tabaka can answer, but recently a friend bought a fixture like this. It is a traditional moving from traditional bulbs to LED bulbs, and we were quite surprised by the scale. We are wondering why this received a G rating.
Taka ciekawostka, to nie wiem, czy ten temat jest gdzieś może znany naszemu prelegentowi.
I'm wondering whether you know this topic well. The greater the
Im literka jest bliższa początku alfabetu, tym taka poprawa.
The alphabet, this time is G.
Natomiast ta literka G wskazywałaby, że ta efektywność jest bardzo, bardzo niska. Należałoby
is very low.
Można to zrobić szybciej.
You can
Policzyć sobie, jaka jest skuteczność świetna, bo takim podstawowym parametrem, będącym miarą energooszczędności jest skuteczność świetna, czyli odczytać, ja tutaj dość słabo widzę, a 806 lumenów mamy i trzeba byłoby jeszcze ustalić, jaka jest moc tej lampy. I być może to tłumaczy.
Okej, tu jest 9,5 W na 60 W, to jest tak określone, więc chyba to jest kwestia zbyt małej wydajności, tak? O to chodzi.
Im niższa skuteczność świetla, tym takie źródło światła będzie bardziej energochłonne.
Unfortunately, those early LED solutions were characterized by particularly low effectiveness, but as the technology developed, this effectiveness increased.
Okay.
So it's like 140, 120. Below 100, this value suggests that it is an old-fashioned solution, an outdated solution. So if you are exchanging your light bulbs to use LEDs, we encourage you to choose those which are rated with A, B, or C, and not, as in this case, G. So it's interesting how you can get it wrong by buying bulbs to your home. So that's just a technical curiosity.
Dosyć popularne są te żarówki.
This is actually quite a popular brand, and they are quite cheap. And now we know why the price isn't particularly high. That's probably the distributors getting rid of stock of those inefficient bulbs. So now we have several questions. If you can have a look at the chat. First we had the question from Katarzyna. Are there legal regulations which make it obligatory to limit light emission in the case of glass houses, for example, in growing tomatoes? Well, when it comes to lighting glass houses, obviously we need artificial lighting to trigger the growth in the vegetables, in the plants.
niedalekim sąsiedztwie, taki szklarni,
but
to jest olbrzymia
we are talking
emisja
about
sztucznego światła w
really
kierunku
significant light pollutions, upward fluxes caused by this artificial lighting. The problem, I think, consists in I wanted to make measurements to see how much light actually is generated in such a situation by using a drone, but the people were not interested in it. I imagine there are no legal regulations which would make it possible for us to take actions that would help reduce upward light fluxes. In line with literature and publications, there are some solutions in place that are quite costly, and not everyone who is growing vegetables can avoid it. So that's a question more to a lawyer, but to the best of my knowledge, no such solutions, legal solutions, are in place. I know that attempts are being made to reduce the amount of light headed upwards. It's a problem in Poland, and I guess abroad as well, but in Poland we have a company which has developed special light which effectively changes just the direction of the light, but this technology is very is as expensive as the curtains which can be installed on the glass of glass houses, and which are a good solution, but an expensive solution. So definitely it would be good if the government was willing to support people, but moving the burden to owners is quite difficult for them to bear. Another question regards Kraków.
Niestety w warunkach wymagań przetargów używane jest bardzo stare, ograniczenie ULOR.
The Municipal Road Association in Kraków quotes a regulation from 2009, and currently the outdated type of street lights that are being installed are inefficient. I would like to point out that norms that are being quoted are not legal instruments. So I imagine that is why old fixtures are being used, which generate upward flux. The ULOR value should be 0, but I imagine it is not the case. Well, unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, the provisions don't mention ULOR needing to be 0. It is a recommendation, but it is not a requirement when it comes to street lighting. And this problem is more extensive. There is just as a curiosity, when we are measuring the light, this light flux is reflected from the wall, so it's difficult to simulate it in a real-life situation. So such measurements should be carried out by experts who can account for that phenomenon. We also I have noticed another question. I have noticed a tendency that photovoltaic panels are being strongly lit. I imagine that's because it's free energy and it's easier to light to lighten photovoltaic panels. I imagine again that's a question towards a lawyer who maybe could address those questions. We also have information from Andrzej from Slovenia. They say that today we use too strong, excessively strong LED lights, and this is to the detriment of our sleep quality. Well, when it comes to sources of light, that's problematic. You probably might know the spectrum characteristics. There's a big component of blue light. When the traditional lights were used before LEDs, the percentage share of blue light was quite low. But when we upgraded to the new technology, so LED lights, this component of the blue light is much greater, and this can result in problems with sleep. But I would like to underline that I am not an expert when it comes to biologists, but I am using what the publications indicate. So when we are subjected to exposure with artificial light, which includes a high share of blue light, indeed, research shows that this is detrimental to our sleep quality, and research also shows that exposure to light, which includes a big share of blue light, can increase the risk of breast cancer, and in the case of men, it is being said that it might increase prostate cancer, the risk of prostate cancer. So it is also the question of how the light in the evening and the exposition affects our moods and our well-being. So definitely the light generated from our smartphones, from our laptops, it all adds up. And one solution that can be used is using filters of blue light filters. This functionality has different names, but basically it's about protecting your eyes. So this makes the light generated, let's say, by your laptop more yellowish rather than bluish. I use such an experiment during my classes with students and show them how such a filter affects the temperature of the light. Don't see other questions. If anyone wanted to take the floor, please tell us. You can also raise your hand so that we can let you ask the question via a microphone. We also have a question by Andrzej Mochar. Kuba, if you could translate.
Andrzej pyta, ze pytaniem do doktora Tabaki, czy pan doktor myśli, że jest możliwe, żeby zatrzymać jednocześnie zanieczyszczenie światłem oraz kontynuować używania przesadzonej, strasznej normy EN 13201.
I think that like in all areas, common sense is necessary. And so common sense also with regard to stopping light pollution. It is about this norm imposing quite large requirements that roads that are often rarely used still need to be lighted. But it is a norm, it is not a provision, so it's not necessary to implement it. It's not mandatory. Usually we are talking about the minimum level of lighting, but the maximum is rarely shown. Last summer, we measured the luminous intensity of train
Wymagana
stations
wartość była bodajże chyba 50 lub
and
coś
of certain
takiego.
roads.
Natomiast z pomiarów wyszło nam
The minimum
ponad
was
100
50
ponad dwukrotnie
laxes,
była przekroczona
candelas,
Rzeczywiście tam normy są
and
podane te
the
wartości,
actual
które muszą być spełnione.
results were more than
Natomiast nie ma
twice that.
informacji na temat tego,
So
żeby
we should
unikać
avoid
sytuacji,
situations
kiedy
where
mamy
we
istotnie przewymiarowane
where we
te
use
parametry. No, a to
excess
oczywiście jest źródłem niepotrzebnego
intensity of
zanieczyszczenia
light.
światłem.
So norms show us the minimum, but very often excessive
Proszę
luminous
Państwa,
intensity is used.
z tego, co
Definitely.
widzę, niestety czas
I'm
nam się
afraid that
kończy.
we are
W związku
running
z
out
tym
of
bardzo
time, so
serdecznie
now I would
dziękuję
like to
za
thank
wspólnie
you
spędzoną,
for this
godzinkę,
hour spent
nawet
with
czasami
us.
ciutkę więcej.
We would like to
Serdecznie Państwa
invite you
zapraszamy
to
na
another
kolejne
meeting,
spotkanie
which will
już za
take
miesiąc
place
w ramach
next
naszych meetingów z
month
teleskopami i
as part of
meetingu
our
z
expert
ekspertami.
meetings. It will be
Otwarte
an
publiczne
open
będzie
meeting,
miało
which will
miejsce
take place
prawdopodobnie
probably
w
on
weekend
the 19th or
19-20
20th of
lutego.
February, and now, as a surprise, we will be meeting a lecturer from Norway.
Wstępna informacja, tak więc
This is
bardzo,
just
bardzo
preliminary
zapraszam
information, but I would like to invite both
słuchaczy i
Polish
słuchaczki,
and
jak i
English
oczywiście
guests,
zagranicznych,
English-speaking
naszych
guests.
uczestników, uczestniczki. Natomiast
And
jeszcze na
at the
końcówce
end,
chciałbym
I would
Państwa
just
na
like to
chwilkę,
take you
zabrać
to
jeszcze
our
na naszą
website,
stronę Polaris.org.pl,
website of Polaris
naszego stowarzyszenia
PL,
i przy okazji osoby,
and
którym
everyone
bliskie
who
jest zanieczyszczenie światłem,
to whom
również, ale i obserwacje nieba,
observing of the sky and
natomiast
reducing
zapraszam,
light
aby
pollution
zerknąć sobie na nasz
is a
link
cause close to
pod
their
tytułem
heart.
Meetingi z
Go
teleskopami.
to
W tym miejscu
this
odnajdą
meeting with
Państwo,
telescopes
informacje
banner.
o
You
możliwości
will
pobrania teleskopu,
learn about the possibility of landing a telescope and observe the sky with us using our equipment. So it's called meetings with telescopes. Telescope with the parameters seen on the website makes it possible to observe various objects in the sky, and obviously we meet up to observe various phenomena in the sky. You can take the telescope for yourself, for your family, or for your school. So you will find a link to our program in the chat box should anyone be interested in joining.
No i polecam, zachęcam.
And we have, right now we have 3 telescopes ready for taking. The remaining 37 are currently in use. Przemysław Tabaka, thank you for your presentation. I hope we will have many chances to meet in the future. Thank you to the team, to the technical teams, to the 2 interpreters. And I would like to invite you to join us again in a month, and a technical comment. There will also be a meeting of the local social dialogue council. Thank you for this meeting. Have a good evening, have a good weekend, because it's Saturday, you have Sunday ahead of you. Have a good evening.